Thanks, Julie. I'm going to run through a few points and then we'll flip it over to Krista. So first and foremost, welcome back, everybody. I hope you really enjoyed your summer. It's not over yet. I think we still have a few more official days of summer, so enjoy it. And then I also wanted to say a welcome to Judy, who's joining us for the first time. So thank you and welcome to Judy. And then I wanted to, I think I talked about this before we left and braked for summer, but I want to just share it one more time. Thank you to everybody who participated in our fundraiser, our Road to Recovery 10K. We raised an outstanding $3,000, which more than doubled what we raised last year. And I'm so happy about that. So that means what we can start doing now is a lottery every month for a $50 bursary for support group members. And the way you can participate and try and get a chance at winning that $50 bursary is through purchasing a copy of our LAS Recovery Companion. It's just $4.99, and it's basically a digital journal that you can print out. And every support group that you attend, or if you miss it, you can grab it on our YouTube channel. You fill out the prompts that are suggested for that support group, and then send us a picture of the page that you completed, and we'll see if you win the $50 for that month. So today is the first month that we're going to be giving away that bursary. I'm going to put a link in the chat if you want to grab your copy of the LAS Recovery Companion. I know a few people have already picked it up, but copy and paste that link, and then you can start filling out the prompts. And hopefully you win the $50. So with that to say, I am going to turn it over to Krista now. She can give herself a bit of an introduction and then take you through the rest of the support group.
Awesome. Hello again, everyone. I am going to share my screen. Okay, can everyone see this? I realized I asked that and everyone's on mute. Thank you very much. Okay, so first question, where is everyone from? I'm hollering at you guys from Texas in the US, but I'm from Michigan. I know that Julie and Ella said that they're in Toronto. Fantastic. Where is everybody else? If you wouldn't mind putting it in the chat, I'd love to see.
Toronto area.
Wrong area, you said?
Toronto area.
Toronto area, I love it. NYC. Okay, I feel silly. Where is Brampton? Where is that? Very cool. Toronto. I'm sorry if you hear my cat in the background. He wants to be involved. Ontario, thank you very much. Can you tell I'm not from Canada? I'm so sorry. Fantastic. Okay, and we'll be using, if you're comfortable, we'll be using the chat function throughout the presentation, because I think that beats y'all sitting there. Sorry, I say y'all. You guys sitting there and just listening to me blab. Okay, so as Ella said, my name is Krista McCormick. I'm a speech language pathologist, or speech therapist, as I feel like a lot of people know us. I usually call us SLP for short, but that's what it stands for. Today, I'd like to talk about the scope of practice of the speech language pathologist, because I think that the name speech therapist or speech language pathologist is precise. Yes, I do work on speech, I do work on language. However, there's so much more within the scope of practice, and I think that the name is not really all encompassing. And I think sometimes that can limit what people think that we can do for them. And really the goal is always to get back as close to previous level of function as possible. So talking a little bit about, do I press enter to move to, very good. Okay, our goals for today. So I've got 3 main goals that I'm hoping we can accomplish together. I want to be very mindful of your time, so I'm going to try to do it efficiently, but not too long-winded. Okay, so first I'd like to explain the scope of practice of the speech language pathologist. With that understanding of the scope, I'm hoping to show you guys how to identify communicative, cognitive, and swallowing disorders, how those can impact daily life. And then with that understanding about the impacts on daily life, being able to identify functional activities that can help work on these areas, because that's one of the greatest things about working with adults is it's all about function. If you're not going to use it in your daily life, we don't really care about it, right? It needs to be meaningful for you. So a little bit about me. As I said, my name is Krista. I'm a bilingual speech language pathologist. I know I don't look it, but I speak fluent Spanish. I was trained bilingually. That's why I moved down to Texas, is because there's more Spanish speakers down here than there are up in Michigan, unfortunately. My specialty is working with adults with acquired brain injury. So as you guys know, that includes stroke and then also traumatic brain injury. I am the owner of a private practice. The name of my practice is NeuroRestore Cognitive and Speech Rehab. Some disclosures just to throw out there really quick. I do have a relevant financial relationship. As the owner of NeuroRestore, I receive financial compensation for working with my clients, but I do not have a financial relationship with Life After Stroke or with any of the products that I'm might have a picture of in this presentation. So I'm not trying to promote anything specific. A little bit about my private practice. We are a mobile bilingual speech language therapy provider. We target the main areas within the scope of practice, which we'll talk about today. I like to go into clients' homes and their communities so that what we do can be as functional and salient for them as possible. Since we provide one-on-one therapy, I really try to make it as particular to each individual client as possible, making sure to take their interests into account, their environment, and their personal goals. So getting into the meat and potatoes of what we're talking about today, the scope of practice. So in my head, I'm a very, very visual person. I like to think of the scope of practice as a tree. I could not find a good image of a tree, and you don't want me to try to draw a tree. So instead, I made a flow chart. But imagine this like upside down, where speech language pathology is like the trunk, and then communication, cognition, and swallowing are like three main branches, if you want. So these are the main areas that we work on as SLPs. Now, there's very many sub areas that we work on, but I would say that these are the main three. I would argue that a more apt name would be communication, cognition, swallowing therapist, but that's a lot to say, so SLP is fine. Here's a little bit more of a detailed scope of practice. We are not going to talk about all of this today, do not worry, but just to kind of show like, oh my goodness, I hope that if you guys went to rehab, if you did speech therapy, I hope that your therapist made sure that you knew that there's all these different things that we can help you with. And they're still within those main three realms. There's many, many sub areas, but those are the main realms within each area. So I wanted to start by talking about the communication branch. That's the yellow one I've got, where it's all about everything language, getting thoughts from my head into your head. And if you have any questions, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this, please feel free to throw them in the chat as we go, and I will do my very best to be paying attention to it. I think, oh my gosh, Mexico. Okay, cool. Francisco, bienvenido. That is really cool. Fantastic. Sorry, I realized I missed someone's comment. But I'll do my best to kind of check in with the chat. Okay, so for communication, that's like one of the main three areas, right? And off of it, we can kind of think about it as two different branches from that: motor speech and language. Motor speech refers to the physical act, the production of speech, my mouth actually moving to say the words. And within motor speech, there's two different main disorders that we treat. I'm not going to get into the specifics of those two, but if you do have any questions or comments about either of those disorders or motor speech in general, please feel free to ask. You can throw it in the chat and we'll have time for questions at the end too. What I mostly want to talk about within communication is language. There's more smaller branches we can talk about, but the main three within that, I'd say, are expressive language, receptive language, and then alternative and augmentative communication, aka AAC. We're going to jump right in. If I can remember the button. Okay, very good. So I'm going to kind of talk about each area, but my whole goal with talking about specific areas is to answer the question, who cares? I love when my clients say, Krista, why are we working on this? Ideally, I would have cut that off at the head and explained it in the beginning. That's my bad if I didn't. But I love that my clients are thinking, why are we doing this? How does this apply to me? How is this going to help me in my daily life? And if I can't answer the question, who cares about what we're doing, I shouldn't be doing it, because if there's not a specific purpose in mind, it's a waste of time for that client. And so for each of these areas, my goal is to answer who cares. So who cares about expressive language? I'm hoping we all do by the time I'm done explaining. Expressive language is the act of generating, so actually generating it, written, spoken, gestural communication to express your wants, your needs, your thoughts, and your beliefs. I want you guys, if you feel comfortable, throw in the chat. Can you think of different things you've done today or throughout daily life that you have to use expressive language or expressive communication for? I'll give you all some time, and then if not, I've got some examples too. I'm using expressive language right now, verbally communicating my thoughts, telling a story, fantastic. Apologizing, true, talking to family, very good. I love it, I love it. Fantastic. So today, or here's some other examples of things you may have done today. So who cares about expressive language? I care about it for my clients because I want them to be able to order food at a restaurant. Man, do I want them to get their needs met, right? Or your wants too. I want you to be able to answer questions at work effectively. If someone asks you a question, how do you do this? I want my patients to be able to answer in a clear and effective way. And then I think Julie might have said it, talking with family, right? Ooh, there's even two more, describing how things are going. Just got off a meeting for an event, helping to plan. Oh my gosh, fantastic. I love that. Very good. Fantastic. Really great examples, you guys. Asking your husband to help you with dinner, explaining a process, describing how things are going. Fantastic. Those are all great examples. So why do we care about expressive language? For all those reasons, right? So if I'm in therapy with a client and they're like, oh, Krista, who cares about this word finding task? I'm like, oh, I hope you do. I know I do, because it's going to help you while you're at work. It's going to help you explain to your husband that you really need those vegetables chopped, right? So moving on to receptive language. Receptive language is often thought of the exact opposite as expressive language, which it kind of is, kind of isn't. They're just really interrelated. That's the only reason I would say that they're not the exact opposite. But after someone sends a message, whether that be written, verbal, gestural, it has to be received by their communication partner. That partner is processing and then attaching meaning to that incoming message, whether the message be spoken or written or gestured. Oh, I think I missed one. Being able to express thoughts and communications to control, stress levels. Oh my gosh, I really love that you're thinking about mental health with it. Absolutely. Because if we have difficulty with word finding, that's going to make me really frustrated, right? If I can't get my point across. But then if I'm then frustrated that I can't express my frustration, I totally feel that. I'm very on board with that. 100%. Okay, so once again, if you guys wouldn't mind jumping in the chat if you want, and thinking about things that you've done today or recently or ever that required you to use receptive language, even if it wasn't auditory, like even if you're not listening to spoken messages, when did you have to process incoming information and attach meaning to it? And I also have examples if you guys would rather me show you. Absolutely. Empathizing with a friend. If you're lending an ear, right, to a friend, taking notes. Oh my gosh, we're going to be talking a lot about that in a minute. Reading a long email at work. I love long. That's very true. They're always long, aren't they? Very, very true. Interviews. Oh my goodness. Great example of when, I remember you said you were doing it. You were looking for a job. I'm really sorry. That truly is its own full-time job. You're doing it. You're doing the work. I love that. Very, very good. All right. So those are examples of why do we care about receptive language, for all those reasons that you guys said. And additional reasons, understanding emails at work, great job. Comprehending dialogue from TV, just doing something fun, right? Coming home after a long day, after all of that mental fatigue, and then being able to relax. Ooh, I'm missing more messages. Let's see. Cooking tonight's dinner, that's right. If you've got a recipe or you're following a video on YouTube, you got to be able to process that information. Getting emails from someone, work or insurance, and interpreting something poorly or not personally, oh my goodness, absolutely. Not only do you have to read what's written, but then you have to attach meaning to it, and then tone. That's a whole nother thing, attaching tone to things. Very complex. I love it. Meditation exercises, absolutely. If you've gotten them written, if you're watching them or something, being able to follow those instructions, right? Very, very good. And then this is one of my favorite ideas, the internal feedback loop. I feel like this is just an unsung hero of communication. This is like the interconnectedness of expressive language and receptive language. So while I'm talking right now, I'm constantly listening to what I'm saying to make sure that what I'm saying is what I meant to say, and that the message is being properly interpreted by the listener. And the reason that I can have that self-monitoring loop is because of receptive language. I'm processing everything that I'm saying. But if I have impaired receptive language, if I'm not able to process everything I'm saying, I might choose words that don't fit. Or if it's severe enough, I could be producing things that almost sound like word salad. And so I feel like that's one of those unknown things that receptive language really impacts expressive language. Awesome. Moving on to AAC, or alternative and augmentative communication. This is a spectrum of technology all the way from low tech to very high tech that's used to either supplement or replace verbal communication. There can be a bunch of different reasons that someone uses AAC. Maybe they are able to come up with the thoughts perfectly in their head, but physically producing the speech is very, very difficult. It looks like there's a chat. Be clearly, but I can use that. Absolutely. Oh my gosh, that is so cool. I love, okay, so you said I can think clearly, but I can't use the whole strength of my voice. I can understand English, Spanish, and French, trilingual. Look at that. And I'm in speech therapy. Fantastic. I love that. There's so many cognitive benefits to being multilingual. That is very impressive. But yes, so maybe someone who has like a degenerating disease that is causing them to lose strength over time, so they can't produce voice, maybe they use a communication device. Maybe someone has the thoughts that they want to say, but it's hard for them to generate words and string them together for a sentence. So I want to see, using the chat, if you guys are familiar with this famous physicist who used a very, very high-tech speech generating device to communicate. Let's see, got a first answer. Absolutely, very nice, very good. Stephen Hawking, absolutely. He was so cool. I don't know what device he was using, but I do know it was an eye gaze device. So there was a little camera on his screen that would track the movement of his eye. I'm not sure if it was both eyes or just one. I'm pretty sure they're usually just one. And usually it's like, if you hesitate, so like you have a screen, and either depending on the person's linguistic abilities, it's either written words or pictures or both. And if you hesitate for a given amount of time on that icon, it'll select it. And then when you create your whole message, you can hover over a button that says like, say it, and then it says it out loud. And so I just think that's so cool that there's someone who has these really, really complex thoughts. And the only reason that it was hard for them to get it from their brain to someone else's brain was ALS, actually, was his disorder. And so I think it's so important to remember whenever I work with my clients, I always make sure to remind them, even if your stroke caused cognitive impairment or communication impairment, that is not an intellectual impairment. That's not the same. It's very different. I know that everyone, all of the people I've ever worked with, are very smart. It's just the fact that they had this damage done to their brain, and your brain controls everything you do. Sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent. I get very excited about these things. Okay, so you guys are fantastic. Very good with the Stephen Hawking. Nice. Here's just some examples of the different range of communication devices that you can have. You can have something as simple as a communication board, where it's just a piece of paper that has written phrases on it or pictures, and the person points to it if it's like something very basic. Or you can have something higher tech. This isn't as cool as Stephen Hawking's device, but similar, where you can select an icon or a written word or access a keyboard, and then the device can produce the speech for you. So those are just a couple of options. Okay, cognition. We're getting into the second of the three main branches of speech therapy. These are by no means all of the different cognitive skills that is within our scope of practice, but I feel like they're most of the heavy hitters. And we're not going to even talk about all of these. I just picked three that I think are really common that I work on very frequently. So I would wonder, if I was you guys, why the heck does a speech therapist work on cognition? What I've been told, how it's been explained to me, is we treat things from here to here. And so all the way from my brain, my face, my mouth, my neck, my throat to my lungs. And so given that stroke happens in your brain, affects cognitive skills, that's my assumption. I also am trying to rock, I don't know if you guys can see, it's my Speech Squad shirt, and it's got a mouth, a larynx, lungs, and a brain. And I think it's a fun representation of our scope of practice. So very first cognitive skill that I think we work on quite frequently is attention. That is your brain's ability to volitionally attend to or block out specific stimuli. There are, I don't even know how many types of attention, but I think three of the main ones are selective attention, alternating attention, and divided attention. Selective attention is when you purposely pay attention to one thing, even while there's something else in the background. So like right now, I'm sure if you guys look around the room that you're in, are there bright lights? Is there sound that you're ignoring? My cat's meowing outside of the door, things like that. Alternating attention is when you're switching back and forth between two different stimuli. So you're paying attention to one at a time, but you switch back and forth. Then divided attention, all of our multitaskers out there, is when you pay attention to two or more things at a single time. And I feel like that can be really cognitively draining. So on the next slide, I've got some examples of people using different types of attention. And I want you guys to tell me in picture 1, picture 2, and picture 3, which type of attention you think is being targeted. Feel free to throw it in the chat. The first one, we see a gentleman who's cooking, holding a baby, and talking on the phone all at the same time. Then in the second one, there's someone reading a book that has TV on in the background. And then the third picture has someone taking a break from their long email that they had to answer a phone call. Picture 1, 2, and 3. What types of attention? If you want, you don't have to answer, but if you want, what do you think is happening? And that's the crazy thing about cognitive skills is we use them all the time and we don't even know it. I'll give a little bit of time, and then if you want, I can tell you guys my thoughts. All right. Yes. Very good. Nicely done. Absolutely. Everyone is agreeing so far, and I agree with you guys. So the first one, that impressive gentleman is dividing his attention between many things all at the same time, right? He's not saying, hey, baby, hold on, wait 1 second because I have to cook, right? Baby doesn't care. He's dividing his attention. Second one, selective attention, right? That person's volitionally choosing to ignore the TV. I have very bad selective attention. They're volitionally ignoring the TV and choosing to pay attention to the book. That takes a lot of cognitive skill. And then that third one, alternating attention. They were paying attention to the laptop or email or whatever, and then now they're paying attention to their phone call. Fantastic. Absolutely. Great job, everybody. You guys should all be speech therapists. And then the last main area of cognition that I'd like to talk about, memory. This is also one of my very favorite things to work on. So this is the brain's ability to hold on to and then subsequently bring back information. There are, once again, a bunch of types of memory, but two of the main types that I tend to work on with my clients are short-term memory and working memory. Short-term memory, exactly what it sounds like, things that have happened within the recent past. Working memory is the brain's ability to hold on to information and simultaneously manipulate it. That one's a little bit more complex. Just like a quick note about short-term memory, I think this is really, really interesting. So lots of times people will come to me And they'll say, Krista, my memory is fine. I can remember what happened 6 years ago. I remember like my daughter's birth or whatever it is, right? And I always tell them that is fantastic. I'm so glad that your long-term memory is intact. The crazy thing about how the brain stores memory is that short-term memory and long-term memory are very different in the brain. I like to think about it like a vault, like where you would store money. If I have a big old vault and my very first dollars that I earn, my very first memories that I make, I put way in the back of the vault, right? They're way safe. And then as I make more money, as I get more memories, they start to be like not guarded, that would be the word in Spanish, stored closer to the front of it, right? Because it's getting more full. So they get stored closer to the front. Well, if someone robs my vault, or if I have a brain injury, the first things to go is whatever's in the front of that vault, right? So those memories, those most recent memories, what I did today, what I did last week, the conversation I had 5 minutes ago, that's what tends to be more difficult for people to remember right after a brain injury. So using the chats, if you guys could come up with some things throughout your day that you have to use your memory for. There's one go-to one that I can guarantee all of you guys have done or will do at some point today. I've got some examples too after you guys share if you want. Oh my goodness, absolutely. Passwords. Totally. That's a good daily one. I always forget to grab an umbrella before leaving my apartment when I know it's going to rain. Totally. Remembering, right? You're probably got a lot going on. Trying to remember, oh, that one thing before I leave. Having conversation, I have to remember what someone just told me in order to respond appropriately, right? Where I put my keys. Isn't that the question? Very good. I love it. I love it. Very good. My first example, and I'll keep an eye on the chat, my favorite example that I always tell all my clients is I will bet you money when you go home today, someone's asking you how your day was. Remember where my keys or phone or leave or lock the door. Oh my goodness, very true. And those are short-term memory things, right? Shoot, did I just lock the door? And some of all of this is normal, right? Like even without brain injury, a lot of us find it hard to remember where we put our keys. So some of this is definitely within the realm of normal. But as I said, discussing your day, got to remember what you did to be able to answer that question, right? Keeping track of doctor's appointments and even following directions in a recipe. That one's extra tricky. I feel like that's a little bit into the working memory category because you read the instruction, you have to hold it in your head as you move on, right? Or if I'm reading something that says, measure out a teaspoon of pepper and then, I don't know, add it slowly. Like I have to be like, okay, I measured it. What was next? Right? Like you're having to manipulate the information as you carry it out. Memory. Why do we care about memory? For these reasons. My cat, can you guys hear my cat? Can I have a thumbs up, thumbs down? Can you hear my cat? No, okay, all right. You guys should hear him. He's so loud. He wants to be involved. Okay, insight. This is, I would say, one of the most abstract, high-level cognitive skills. And it's tricky. It's your brain's ability to demonstrate awareness of your deficits and to apply appropriate compensatory strategies. So I really love using analogies of the gym because when it comes to speech, a lot of what we do is not visible, right? For physical therapy and occupational therapy, a lot of times the deficits that they work on are very, very visible. After a stroke, if your gait pattern, your walking has changed, it's very visible, right? You're very aware of that. Man, I walk different than I used to, or it's a little bit harder for me to walk than it used to be. Or for occupational therapy, man, doing my daily tasks like getting the laundry done is tiring now. Or the range of motion of my left arm is not what it used to be, right? But when it comes to speech for communication and cognition, a lot of what we do is not very visible. And so I really, really do my darndest to provide lots of education to the people that I work with so that it's very clear of like, oh, okay, this is what we're working on. Like I'm trying to make it more visible. And so one of my favorite analogies is relating everything to the gym, because I think we can all relate to that, right? Working out, being active. So for me, insight would be like understanding, being aware of and understanding what you need to work on to be better in the gym. Let's say my issue is that I want to be able to bench press more. Well, before I can do that, I need to know what's wrong with my form or whatever reason that I can't bench very much. I need to know what's going on there so that I can then fix it so that I then can bench more, right? And so I always make sure that when I'm talking to my clients, we have insight into what their deficits are. Not to be a jerk, I'm not trying to say you can't do this, you can't do that, but hey, your brain injury made it harder for your brain to process incoming information. What we're going to do about it is X, right? Because if we know what we need to work on, if we know what the deficit area is, there's a much better chance that what the practice will do and the information we talk about will stick. So very abstract, but knowing what's going on, so then you can use appropriate strategies. Why do we do this? As I said, to be able to compensate for these areas that are hard to do. In this next slide, I want you guys to think, I think at least one of these things was mentioned before. I want to say phone alarms might have been mentioned, but sticking in the chat, what do you think each of these strategies is compensating for? We've got setting phone alarms. I do it all the time. Circumlocution is when I can't think of a word that I want, and so instead I describe it or I talk around the word. So if I'm like, I went to the store yesterday and I bought, oh, it's in the dairy section, it's liquid, comes from cows, that's circumlocution. And then last, earplugs to help you focus. Do you have any guess? Picture 1, 2, or 3. Doesn't have to be all of them. It could be none of them. Nicely done. I like that. Very good. Someone said memory for the first one, phone alarms, right? And then for the third one, selective attention. Absolutely. I'm the person wearing earplugs. That should be me. Word finding. Very good. The second one, word finding. Absolutely. So just because something like is hard for us doesn't mean that we can't use strategies to help, right? It's a big part of rehab. I hope if you guys saw therapists, I hope they taught you strategies. Very important. And then I'm going to try to go a little bit quicker through this last part. I won't talk any faster, but maybe I'll leave out a little bit of information just because I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So then the last branch, swallowing. I put down some of the different steps to swallowing. We won't talk about all of these in depth, just some examples. So question, why the heck does a speech therapist, what business do they have treating swallowing? Once again, we treat from the brain down to the lungs, and your larynx or your voice box is a big part of that, and your esophagus, which is near your trachea within the larynx. So it's a reflex that's controlled by your brain, right? And that reflex can be impaired after a stroke or a brain injury, depending on the area of the brain injury. And actually, I might even ask you guys, while you were in the hospital, did any of you guys have a modified diet, or did you work on swallowing with a speech therapist? Yes, okay. And we might kind of change a little bit how we do this based on that. So sorry about thick and liquids. Yep, gross. That was going to be my question. Overall consensus? Boo. Right? Am I right? Modified diet stink? Yep. Okay, totally fair. All right, I'm going to change how we talk about this. Oh, dysphagia. I'm very sorry. Oh, wow. Oh my gosh, carotid dissect. That's a whole thing. I'm so sorry. Yep. Totally. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we're gonna kind of scrap how we're gonna talk about this. I just feel very, very strongly about this. Let's see. No modified diet. Have noticed a subtle change in swallowing, but did not about speech therapist swallowing. But I know, isn't that so funny? I'm like, wait, no one calls a swallowing therapist. Single texture and motion. Oh my gosh. Okay. First of all, I'm very sorry. I hope that your guys' speech therapist did a good job of working with you, because eating is not only like a life necessity, it's just a great pleasure in life, right? Like it's such a social thing. It's such an emotional and psychological thing, right? Like it's a time in our day in which we can relax. So I'll try not to be on a pedestal for too long about it, my high horse, but I think that my job is not to be the food police. It's not. My job is to make sure that my clients are well informed about the risks and the benefits of eating whatever diet I recommend for safety versus whatever diet they want for their mental health and for whatever they want to do, right? Because there are pros and cons to both. So if your therapist did not do this, I'm so, so sorry. But what we really should be doing, we do our swallow exam, whatever, we should see what's going on. And then, hey, I get it. You want to eat regular solids and thin liquids, don't we all? Okay, here's the pros of that. You're going to eat more. You're going to be way happier. Your quality of life will be better. You will probably be healthier in that you won't lose weight because you'll still want to be eating, right? Those are pros. Cons could be, hey, there's a chance that you're going to aspirate more. It's probably going to be more uncomfortable if you're coughing a lot. There's a chance, I got a sonda, I don't know how it's called in English. Ooh, a sonda. Was it a tube in your stomach? Feel free to put the answer in there. I have, if that's what it is, I've got a word for it in English. I don't know what a sonda is. Oh. So sorry. See my divided. Yes. Okay. So in English, we call it a PEG tube, PEG, percutaneous endogastric tube, a tube in your stomach. So if your swallow is very, very disordered, oh, my cat's now aggressively pushing against the door. You can, I'm so sorry. The children are revolting. You can have a PEG tube in which that's where you get all your nutrition. But all of that to say, I really hope your therapist also said, here are the pros of eating whatever the heck you want. And then here are the cons of eating this recommended diet. Like if you aspirate thickened liquids, it can be more dangerous than if you aspirate thin liquids. You most likely don't want to eat or drink that. So you're probably going to eat or drink less. And you'll just have a lower quality of life because who wants to eat that? So if no one told you that before, I'm so sorry. I feel like the newer SLPs coming out are a little bit more flexible and a less rule-based. But sorry, I digress. Examples, it sounds like you guys already know of things that you can feel or what it looks like if you have disordered swallowing. Maybe food gets kind of stuck in your throat. Maybe you have to clear your throat a lot or you cough while you're eating a lot. Maybe some food spills out one side of your mouth while you're eating. And what do we do? Hopefully these are some things that you guys have seen with your swallowing treatment, as a lot of also counseling. I hope that there was lots of counseling with it. But we can do restorative exercises focused on strength, or we can do compensatory measures, such as postural changes or modifying the texture of the solid or liquid. And it sounds like a lot of you guys are familiar with modified textures, and I'm sorry, because that can be a go-to, and it really shouldn't always be the only thing that we do. It can be one of the many tools that we use. So if you guys ever want to chat about dysphagia, about swallowing, let me know. Okay, I'm so sorry. I really tried to not be too long-winded, but I am a speech therapist at the end of the day. So I wanted to know, do you guys have any questions that you wanted to discuss?